Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Advanced Knowledge Capture with TheBrain 13. My name is Matt Caton, and I am joined today by TheBrain CEO, Harlan Hugh.
Thank you, Matt. Well, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of what TheBrain is and give kind of a conceptual view of what the purpose of the product was from the day it was conceived. When we started working on TheBrain as a company, I had already been working on it for a few years. So, the original idea was just like, how do you create a way of people capturing their thinking in the computer? Because when I would talk to people about software and computers and how excited I was about them when I was just a kid, basically, I couldn't really get people to understand why I saw the computer as being so exciting and so game-changing, life-changing. And really, the only way I could explain to them the way I thought about the computer was that it was a way of taking the things in my head and kind of making them into reality, right? So the software was a way of enabling other people to do that who didn't know how to program and couldn't just like make whatever they wanted, right? So that's why the idea of being able to connect anything to anything else and being able to create a map that really matched the way you thought about it was so important to me, right? So the whole idea of organizing things inside of containers using, filing cabinets and folders and trash cans and all of these kind of metaphors from ages ago just was so broken to me that I thought it was kind of a reason why people didn't understand what was so great about using a computer, right? So the idea of changing the metaphor for the interface to the computer to be something that's much more exciting and got a lot more potential is what led us to develop TheBrain. And the way that their thoughts are arranged on the screen with the parents above and children below, that was kind of a natural outgrowing of the way that people group things in their minds, right? So when you think of something, you go, okay, well, this is a concept that encompasses many other concepts, right? So that's the child-parent relationship, right? But then, of course, anything that you think of, it's very uncommon to have something that really only belongs in one place, right? So, when you meet a person, you think of the context that you know that person from, you think of the other people that person knows, you think of the things that you did with that person. All of these different relationships are something that that are different ways that you arrive at that piece of information. So you follow the associations in your head. So I wanted to be able to capture those associations digitally and let you see them and really like make them concrete. So that's why the visualization was also kind of a foundation of the whole system. We built the visualization first, and then we thought, well, you should really be able to have more than just that. You want to be able to take notes on things and so forth. So the notes editor was really kind of the second piece of the system that was created, right? And originally we thought, oh, we're going to use all these new technologies, at the time they were new, for integrating third-party pieces of information inside the notes, right? So we thought, oh, we'll just be able to embed a little, window into Word or Excel inside here, right? But as it turns out, those technologies were not fully baked by Microsoft. They didn't really work. So we kind of gave up on that and thought, well, we'll just let people attach files, okay? And then this thing called the internet came along, and we said, hey, this is great. Now we can attach information from all over the world and have it kind of up to date inside your brain, right? So today, of course, that's evolved all the way to having our own embedded browser inside the brain and being able to integrate those things there, right? But and drag and drop to be able to add information into the brain was always something that was very important. We had this idea about what we call direct manipulation, which basically means that instead of pushing buttons to do things and issuing commands, you actually touch the things that you are working on via the mouse in those days, but now with your finger also. Kind of a more literal interpretation of direct manipulation. But that's why the gates and so forth are all built on drag and drop to connect information, to create new connections, and then also, of course, dragging and dropping files and folders and web pages and so forth into the software, right? So these are all things that we've been working on for a very long time. Of course, they've evolved, and some of them become kind of more standardized features that are pretty common throughout other software now. But these are things that were designed right from the core to enable people to capture their thinking, really. So in addition to kind of thinking about it like that from the start, eventually it became clear that the brain should really be a repository of all digital knowledge, right? So that's why we've really focused on enabling all of these different attachments to come into your brain, and any item in your brain, which we call thoughts, of course. Any thought in your brain can have multiple attachments, and those attachments can be web pages, files, folders, and then the web pages and then the files and folders can also be internal to your brain as well as being external, right? So basically that means that things that you want to kind of take with you, so to speak, can go in your brain, and your brain can follow you around, right? So that's again the idea that your brain is really your primary interface to all your digital information. So you should be able to access it on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop, on your work computer, and so on and so forth, without having to think about it. So anything that you put inside your brain, being internal files and internal folders, are all synchronized across the cloud, and we try to make that as seamless as possible, of course. Yeah, I mean that whole at one point the Sun, who's now Oracle, they had this saying called the network is the computer, right? Well, we kind of thought, well, no, the brain is your computer.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it was kind of an ambitious goal, but I think we've accomplished a lot of it, and now at the Brain 13, we've really kind of solidified a lot of these things. I talked about the notes editor as being kind of one of the first things that we wanted to build for the Brain, and in version 13, it's the first time that I can say that we've really accomplished 99% of our goals in terms of the notes editor. Right? Yeah. We've had a lot of different editors over the years, and most of them have been third-party offerings that we've integrated and kind of like massaged a little bit to try and get them to do what we wanted. In the beginning, we wanted to write our own, and we tried.
And now we've come full circle.
Yeah.
It's, the dream comes true with the Brain 13.
Yeah, somebody told us, that's too hard, don't do that, right? But yeah, we did it. And now it works almost exactly like I would like it to. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that's a great sort of retrospect of where the Brain came from and what's gotten us here today. And on that note, I'll encourage you, if you are new to the Brain, again, we now have a nice overview of creating thoughts in your brain, how they're connected to one another, and adding content associated with those thoughts. I encourage you to, if you are new to the Brain, join us for a Brain 101 class, where we go over really just the basics and get into the nitty-gritty of some of the things Harlan mentioned, drag and drop, adding notes, adding content. You'll see me do some of that today, but we really slow things down in those Brain 101 classes that are typically every Friday. So join us for one of those. I think we're going to now transition into taking a look at some new features of the Brain 13, but stay with us afterwards for more questions from you. They're already coming in. that we will be presenting to Harlan. And then, as I understand it, we've got sort of a special announcement at the end of the webinar today to share with you. So you'll be the first to hear, those of you that are on the call with us today.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I was saying to Matt yesterday, we could kind of tell everyone that, about some of the new things we've got happening in the development labs here. It's some really exciting stuff, and I can't wait to tell you about it, but I'm gonna have to wait.
Stay tuned
a little bit.
Stay tuned. For now, the Brain 13 has the floor. So let's go ahead and start talking about some of the great new features. And it was actually hard to make a list of, what are the top 10 new features of the Brain 13. I went around and interviewed a few folks while we were still in beta, and I just got different answers every time. So this is not a complete list of all the features of 13, but some of what we feel are the true highlights. And the first, of course, is the WYSIWYG notes editor. So each individual thought within your brain can have its own note associated with it. Whether you choose to use that note or feature or not, some people use the brain just to connect all of their files to one another or manage all their web pages, but it's often sometimes so incredibly useful just to have a note that goes along with that particular thought. Maybe it's just sort of a journal on a project that you're working on or specific details you need to keep track of. And the notes editor has evolved, as Harlan said, over time, bringing us to a true WYSIWYG interface. So here you can see I've got a list of tasks for a project on an architectural firm Brain that I'm running. And I want to give this a bit of formatting. So upcoming tasks, that's pretty important. I'm going to give that a subtitle, and sort of my back burner tasks, I'll make that a subtitle as well. And I want to indent these over to the right. So I'm just going to select, and I'm using just the buttons that are available. There's keyboard shortcuts, as you may know, for all of these different features. But I can just highlight a particular line or even place my cursor on the line and bump that over to the right. And here's a few things that are going to be happening with another project. I'm going to bump those over and leave those two down below. Now let's start adding some more formatting. I'm going to make a few of these bold that are particularly important. Owner wants a new pool house. Okay, we're going to make that bold and underlined. And we need this new filtering system that needs to be purchased. So I'm actually going to highlight that with some red text to draw my attention to it. Can't quite see that. I'll also add a little bit of background color as well. So some very, very simple formatting tasks that I've applied. Those of you that are coming from the Brain 12 to the Brain 13 will immediately see there's no markdown tags. There's no extra syntaxes. In the background, behind the scenes, the Brain is formatting its note using Markdown, but we're not seeing any of that front and center. We're left with a nice, clean display. You'll see in just a bit, I'm going to be opening up my cell phone as well and going to the Brain, and the formatting is replicated there as well. A nice, clean, even display throughout my Brain. And that is the true beauty of the WYSIWYG notes editor.
I want to talk a little bit about this, which is, everyone just kind of expects WYSIWYG these days, right?
Yeah.
That's, if all we were doing was just building a WYSIWYG editor, it'd be no big deal, right? But the reason this is a big deal is because it is Markdown, but it's also WYSIWYG, right? And as far as I know, the Brain is the only WYSIWYG editor for Markdown, right? So Markdown is great because it allows you to have a common way of formatting text across multiple applications. You can take the Markdown that you build in the Brain and paste it into your content management system or GitHub or whatever you want, right? But building Markdown is not very much fun for some people. Some people really enjoy it, but it's a lot of fiddly bits.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So
I was a late adapter, but I caught on quickly, which is the purpose of
yes.
Markdown. But still, it was always in the back of my mind, well, it'd be nice if that wasn't there, you know,
Right.
so if you didn't have to see all of that extra fiddly bits.
Yeah, normally you have a preview window and a typing window, an editing
Yes.
window, right?
Yeah.
And in the Brain 11, I think it was, we kind of merged those two into one. So that was good, but it still wasn't ideal, right? Because you didn't really get to see exactly how it looked until you clicked away, right?
Right.
But now you can see exactly how it looks as you're editing. So
Yeah.
this is something that was non-trivial.
Yeah. Yes. But what about those people that we leave out in the dark that liked all the fiddly bits?
Oh,
they
boy.
liked the Markdown. They wanted to see and manually type inline. You can still type inline Markdown as you go if you'd like. And if you want to see the Markdown syntaxes, we have the Show Markdown button. So we can click the Show Markdown, and there are the fiddly bits. They've all appeared. So you can see specifically all of the Markdown formatting. And we know that's still important to a wide audience of people that use Markdown, as Harlan mentioned, in GitHub and other applications. They want or need to see those Markdown syntaxes. So they're still there if you need them. You can turn them on and off as you navigate through your Brain. And if you do want to know more about Markdown, we still have the Markdown reference guide. So you can look at our all of the syntaxes that we adhere to in the Brain there as well.
And not only can you view Markdown, you can actually type Markdown also.
Absolutely, yeah, as I go, absolutely. And next is another component of the notes, still staying with the theme of WYSIWYG, and that is tables. Tables have really come a long way with the Brain 13. I'm going to go down to my team. And I've got individual thoughts for all of my different team members and on their thoughts. I'm gonna have their phone number, their contact information, and meeting notes and so forth. But I just want to create sort of a cheat sheet of all of my different employees, how to contact them, what they have which buildings they have the key to and here in my company and so forth. So I'm gonna create a new table on this blank note. So if I click on Insert and Insert Table, I first have a wonderful menu to select how many cells I want. I'm going to go 4 cells down, 5 cells wide, and I can start creating my table. So I'm going to start with my member names. So Barrington, hit tab, Liz, and so forth. Down below, I'm going to have their cell number. I'm going to have their extension. Like I mentioned earlier, they've got keys to individual client offices. I'll have that information. If I want to add a new table, I can actually, or not a new table, but rather a new column, a new row. If you see these dots over on the side and at the bottom, I can add a new column. So I'm making my table a little bit larger. I need to move Liz to the right. I can select the Liz and click on our little icon here that opens up the table menu, and I can just bump that particular column over to the left. Now, this is a pretty boring table. I'm not going to sit here and type every cell one by one. No one wants to see my slow typing. So I have pre-built my table. Let's give this a little more screen real estate. And once again, Liz is sort of a VIP. I'm gonna select her table, and I am going to bump Liz over to the left. And notice up above some of the buttons that are available to me for Markdown, for formatting, are grayed out. There's some things that you simply can't do. I can't link every bit of text here, so the link button is grayed out. What I can do is still available to me, so I can make Liz's entire column bold. Once again, I can continue adding on additional columns, additional rows. I can select a group of cells, and notice even some of these cells have lists, bulleted lists, numbered lists. So anything that's available to me when I select that cell or group of cells, again, those buttons will still be available up above. But once again, this is needs a little bit more of attention coming to this particular table. It's very important to me. So again, I am going to open up the table toolbar up above, and this is where I can really get into manipulate my particular table. Cell by cell or feature by feature, if I just want the first row background to be yellow, I can select that. If I want the first column of text to be yellow, I can select that as well. But we've also added for you these pre-built styles, which I really particularly like. I think there are almost 50 different pre-built styles, and I can find the style that is going to work best for me. So I'll lighten things up here with that sunset. I like that. Apply. And again, as I add more cells or more columns in the future, they'll keep that same formatting. I can come back and manipulate this table in the future at any time. And I've got to tell you, I've never had so many tables in my brain after we've developed this. My table count in my brain has, it's like a hyperbolic curve. I've got so many tables now because I like the look of them. It makes sense. It's a great way to store and organize data and information for your thoughts in the brain.
Yeah, I should give a little shout out to the team here. They did a really great job building the tables. Markdown, of course, does not really support tables.
Yeah.
And in the versions of Markdown that do support tables, you can only have one bit of text per cell. You can't have multiple lines.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have paragraph types inside of tables and so on and so forth. So we're kind of pushing the limits, or we've pushed beyond the limits actually.
Yeah. Bulleted lists, hyperlinks. I can just click on that email and go right to it.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did a great job. And there's a lot of features here that Matt's not really getting into. But I mean, you can drag and drop to move things around. You can hit enter to insert new tables. You can do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of fun with the tables. And another feature of the brain, I'm going to switch to a different brain now, actually. And I want to take a look at, I'm going to stay in this brain one more time for this one. This particular feature is really great for heavy users of the notes feature. I use them in particular, and I'm just going to navigate down to the different projects that I'm working on. No, that is not it. Stand by. I'll just do a search. There we go. So this particular house in my portfolio, I'm reviewing the history of Sears mobile or custom built homes. There's a lot of data going on in this particular thought. I've got graphics, I've got bulleted lists, I've got links, a lot of data on my research, and we're left with this long scrolling column. If I were to print this out, it could be 10, 20 pages long. It's a lot of information. So what we have available is the option to go into your preferences and switch your brain over on the Notes Editor tab from the simple layout in the notes area to the multi-column. And let me just give this a little bit more screen real estate. And as you can see, I start on the column on my left, all about the Sears kit homes. And as I scroll, you'll notice what's appearing on page 2 comes down, wraps around, and starts appearing on page 1, or the first column rather, for me. So I get a bigger picture overview of all of my content. I'm broadcasting today on a lower resolution so that everyone can keep up with what I'm clicking on and showing on the screen. We've got other monitors, very large monitors, high resolution. I can actually minimize the plex and go 4 or 5 columns on a very large note that I'm researching. And it doesn't end there. I can also, so this national list information is particularly important to me. Maybe I want to bring that over to another thought in my brain. I can actually start selecting from the left and drag all the way over to the right. If I need to continue adding new information, I can do that right there in the note. So editing in both fields, selecting, copying, continues on in this particular display. So it's a really great way if you've got a lot of data in your notes to display and access your content.
Yes, the reason, excuse me, the reason why we built this feature is that when you have a widescreen monitor and you're trying to use the whole monitor, it's kind of ridiculous when you're editing a note, because you've got a sentence that's like you're going like this, right? It's very hard to read, right? So all the typographers out there will know, you don't make your columns very wide because it makes them very difficult to read, right? So in order to take advantage of a full screen, of course, what you want to do is break those into columns and show columns across multiple, across the entire display. But normally, the way that's done is it's kind of predefined. Like you say, okay, the text is going to break here, it's going to go to this column and that column and so forth. But that's something that's done kind of after you're finished, right? When you're actually editing live, having a multi-column display to edit live in is very uncommon. And we put a lot of work into making this a seamless experience that scrolls naturally from one column to the next. So it's something I'm personally quite proud of.
So I'm going to move away then from some of the features that are happening in the notes area of the brain, and I'm going to talk specifically about the Plex. You know, people really enjoy customizing the brain for their use, for their purposes. The wallpaper that you select is a reflection of either the brain's content or your own personality. You saw my space brain. This is my own personal brain. I've got the ocean out there. We're going to jump into a couple of different brains from time to time throughout the webinar today. This particular brain, I've got, you know, we're going from one company type to another. So this is an apparel company, and we're working on a few different projects. And I have 3 different, very distinct categories that all of my projects fit into. It's either an active project, it is a completed project, or it's an upcoming project. There's no variation beyond that. The brain is a visual organization tool. So we take that visualization factor to the next level by giving you what we call dynamic wallpapers. So depending on the type of content that you're looking at, it can change the wallpaper within the brain. This is particularly good for folks that have everything all inside one brain database. Sometimes it's personal information, sometimes it's career-related information, sometimes it's for a particular client. But notice when I go into my active projects, I'm on my projects thoughts, so I'll take a look at all of my active projects, and the wallpaper in the background changes for me. So I'm down to earth. This is what I'm currently focused on. I've typed all of these thoughts as active projects, so anytime I click on one, it's going to retain that particular wallpaper. When I come out of this area, back into my projects, it goes back to my general wallpaper. And I can easily identify completed projects. I've got sort of a picture of space there. My upcoming projects, I have separate wallpaper that is just meaningful to me as well. So you can really, really have some fun with this particular feature, but it also serves a great purpose, that visual identification of this is the type of project. And I'll show you how I set this feature up. I'm going to create a new category for dream projects. So this is, we're looking into the far-reaching future. These projects are not on the forefront. I don't need to be focused on these, but long-range projects that I'm working on, I'm going to give this a thought type, and that's where we identify the dynamic wallpaper. So I'm going to create a new type from the thought properties display, and this is going to be a dream So this is a new thought type. And from the dream project thought type thought, we can click and, right click and set up a dynamic wallpaper. So there I've got sort of an interesting wallpaper. I have a copy of that image. So all of my dream projects will have this wallpaper behind it, whereas I'll know instantly I'm working on an active project upcoming and so on. So you can use this particular feature throughout your brain by typing those thought types, and it's just such a nice feel as well. I love just the transition going from one particular thought in a brain to another, and having that visual cue. Sometimes I do a search. I might forget, is this project still ongoing? Is this project retired? I've got a lot going on in my life, so if I find a particular project, I need to look up a name, Sneaker X. So I'm doing a little bit of searching. And yes, I'm working on the Sneaker X. The wallpaper in the back is going to identify visually to me that that is an upcoming project that still needs a lot of work in that content in that area.
This is something that we've had a lot of requests for over the years.
Yeah.
For quite a long time. One of the team members was like, "Oh, hey, this looks cool. I could just build this, right?" And he did a great job. You know, when it was finished and we put all the kind of finishing touches on it with the transitions, the fading in and out of the wallpaper. I mean, it might not come across in the webinar, but when you see this live in front of you, it's quite compelling, actually.
It is. It is.
And especially if you were going to be doing a presentation or something in the
Yeah.
this is the this is an audience pleaser.
Yeah. 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 That's got the wow factor for sure. Another feature in the brain, I'm actually going to move back into the notes for this particular feature. And this is a brain that, this particular example brain that I have is set up as a student brain. So a student keeping track of their classes. We've got a lot of students, educators, teachers, people in academia that utilize the brain to stay organized. And so this is a student brain who happens to be taking their first semester a course on the elements of equation. And you're going to see right away over here in the content area of the brain are some mathematical expressions. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. This is not a feature that I'm going to get a lot of use of.
I think we have this equation spelled wrong.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I see it right away. And of course, there's the spell check turned on. Thank you.
There we go.
I did that on purpose, just to show the spell checking feature. But regardless, you know, it's a great example of the variety of usages that the brain can accommodate. People often ask me, what do people use the brain for? There's no cut and dry answer for that. Storing files, managing, having a graphic archive, notes, journaling, and here's yet another sort of key in the puzzle. These mathematical equations are just fantastic and super easy to use. They utilize LaTeX, the mathematical symbols. Once again, I mentioned earlier, there's that question mark icon. You can go to the Markdown reference guide, and there's a link on that thought to look at in great detail about all the different types of mathematical equations and LaTeX expressions, thank you, that can be used. And notice I can click on one of these if I want to edit, and that's actually what it looks like behind the curtain. And up above is, how it's actually being displayed. And I actually made a mistake on this particular thought. I'm sure, Harlan, you probably saw this right away as well. Everyone knows that the Newtonian physics isn't A equals D to the 5th S over dt squared, it's d squared s. So I can just click and change that to d squared and update that content. Now to start from scratch, let's say I have down below, oops, let me go to the bottom, Matt's equation, and let's format like the rest of the table up above, or I think that's a subtitle. No, that is, I'll find it. There you go, H4. That's fine. And I am going to, now two things I can do. I can actually click on insert and insert a mathematical expression. Or a nice little shortcut is $sign. So $2. I start with a sample equation and I can just start typing something that I know for sure to be true. Half equals, now this would be a fraction, so we'll say 1 over 2. There we go. That's my maths equation. Half equals 1 over 2. Okay. But you can see that the possibilities with mathematical equations in the brain.
We have a lot of engineers and scientists using the brain. I was actually surprised at the level of demand for this feature in particular, but yeah, happy to have delivered it at last.
And next, this is a feature that I do use quite often, and the reason why I'm demoing this feature is twofold. Number one, because I think it's great and I use it quite often, but also number two, it gives me a chance to show you how I use this feature on my cell phone. So in addition to the Brain 13 launching on the desktop, the Brain 13 iOS app is now available as well. And so I have an app that I'm running right now that emulates, there we go, that emulates my cell phone. So I'll actually hold this up to the camera. So here's my cell phone, and I happen to have the Brain open. Every time I tap on a thought, it navigates, to that particular thought. And as you can see, I'm reflecting that on the screen. And the feature that I like really a lot within the Brain utilizing is the checklists. Checklists within your notes and the ability to add simple to-do lists in your Brain through checklists is a wonderful, wonderful way to stay organized, keep on track of all the different projects that you're working on. So this is what my phone looks like, and this is what my actual Brain looks like. I'm actually on a thought with a checklist. And so we've had checklists within the Brain, and anytime you add a checkbox in the notes content area, you can open up your to-do list to keep track of all the different types of projects that you may be working on. But the great thing now, the great new feature is that if I,
just to be clear, so the to-do list that Matt's showing on his phone and the one that's on the right side of the Brain is a consolidation of all the check boxes that you have throughout your notes in many different thoughts, right? Just in case.
Yes.
For those of you that are not familiar with the feature.
And I can check something off here in the notes. It's going to update over here in the content area, or I can check it off in the content area and it'll update over in the notes. And if I keep the two in sync, I'll go ahead and click on the sync icon to, the Brain syncs in the background every 3 to 5 minutes. I'm just going to go ahead and sync this and out on my cell phone. I'll tap on that sync icon to get the latest, greatest changes. And you can see that those changes are being reflected in with the nice little button. I can get directly to my to-do list right here on my cell phone. And here's the great new feature is that when I check something off, so I need to remove my front planters, I'm also going to remove my side. So right here from the actual to-do list, I'm going to add a little bit of content and side planters. There we go. So I add that content and sync, and when my Brain syncs on my desktop, both are updated. So my Brain is keeping it obviously in perfect sync with the desktop application, and I can actually click and modify content in my to-do list from either my phone or from my desktop application. Just a wonderful, wonderful new way of oh, and I need to resync again. There we go. So a wonderful way of staying focused, staying on top. There's the update, remove front and side planters here on my desktop as well.
Yeah, just a little note on the sync process. Some people are curious about this probably. The reason why it doesn't just sync like instantaneously is because if we did that, you wouldn't be able to do undos, right? So that's why we give you a few minutes to really settle into your changes. If you must have it on your other device this very second, then you can click the sync button.
There you go.
But generally speaking, you don't need to do that.
And the final component that I want to share with you is multi-attachment support. I particularly like using this feature with the Brain Box. If you're not familiar with Brain Box, it's a really, really great way to get content and data into your Brain quickly. You're out browsing the internet, you find a great website that you really, really like. We've got a couple of different utilities for all of the popular browsers that are out there, so you can have the extensions and add-ons for the Brain Box icon. If I open up a web browser, here I'm on the Brain, and I want to add the Brain web page, I can actually just click on that Chrome extension, and I'm not logged in right now. I'll go ahead and log in really quickly. And I've added that web page into my Brain Box. So it works great for web content. It works great for files and attachments. So I can right-click on an attachment and send a file into my Brain Box as well. Now that I have my Brain Box and the content in my Brain Box, I'm going to actually expand my Brain Box. There you can see the Brain webpage just got added at the very top, and here is all of my content that I've quickly added. Maybe I didn't have the Brain open at the time, so I didn't want to drag and drop it in. You can access BrainBox from your Safari or web browser on your iPhone or your mobile devices as well. This is the content that I've added in over time, and it's time to start cleaning things up and find a home for this content. So with my kids, we form a little group. We call it the Supper Club. We like to try new recipes, grilling, barbecuing, and so forth. And actually, I am going to, let's go ahead and close my phone now. I'm going to create a new category here, simply called sort of the wish list of what we want to cook in the future. So that's my wish list for my supper club with my kids. And I'm going to add some content in here. I have found content over the years or over the past couple of months, such as a couple of recipes. Notice rather than clicking and dragging one at a time, this feature allows us to grab multiple individual items. I can scroll through way back in time. I've found quite a few dinner rolls, there we go. So quite a few different recipes that I've been meaning to try, haven't tried them yet. They're still sitting there in my brain box. I can now multi-select. So I did that with the control key. Now when I right click, I've got these great options of, in this case, I do want to move them out of my brain box and into the Plex. So I'm going to move this selection to this particular thought. And they'll all be added as attachments to that particular thought. These are all different things that I'm going to try for my supper club. So it's just a really, really great way to speed things along. Notice they're no longer, since I moved them and I didn't copy them, they're actually no longer appearing, as you can see, in my brain box. So a nice, clean, easy way to start cleaning up that brain box.
And this feature of being able to interact with multiple attachments at a time also applies to the attachments inside your thoughts also. So like, Matt, if you click on the icon next to the
yes.
thought there.
There we go.
There we go. So this list here can also be used to do multi-select. And it's not just for websites, it's also for files and so forth. Right? So.
Great. Well, Harlan, I think it's time to get into some questions.
Okay.
So we've got quite a few that have come in for you. I hope that gives everyone a little bit of enticement to check out all the great new features that are a part of the Brain 13. But right now, we're going to actually start selecting some of your questions that have come in. And the first question that I see that came in for Harlan was, we talked a little bit about this. What was your vision for the Brain 13, but did you achieve it? Going from 12 to 13, do you feel like you took it where you wanted to go? I think you probably answered that with the WYSIWYG.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but yeah, I mean, 13 is quite satisfying. I really do feel like we've kind of checked the box in terms of, really reaching a threshold of a superior note experience. It's not an exaggeration for me to say that editing in the Brain is my very favorite editor. I used to use, Word a zillion years ago. And then, I transferred to, various other editors over the years. But now every time I'm editing somewhere else, I'm like, oh, it's not the Brain, it's not working, right? All of the little things kind of really have added up to make it really, really nice. From the way that the cursor text caret moves in the Brain, to the way it responds when you say up arrow, left arrow, cut, paste, all those things are just like really worked out.
And Harlan, what was the most difficult feature to develop for the Brain 13?
Well, I mean, the thing that definitely took the most time was making the notes editor WYSIWYG. We had a bit of an ongoing joke. One of the engineers here at the office said, oh, I think I can get that done in X amount of time. And I said, oh, really? Okay, we'll see about that, right? And it took many multiples of that amount of time to really finish it, right? in terms of something that's not obviously difficult, one of the things that we have been promising for some time was to make it compatible with Apple Silicon, the native Apple chips. M1 they call it, or M2 now. That seems like all we have to do is like, just check a few boxes in the development environment and hit build, and like it's going to work, right? And that may be the case for some developers, but for us it was not. We had to rebuild an entire subsystem of the product in order to make that happen. The framework that we had to build to do that was a lot of work, a lot of work. But thankfully, that has other benefits. It just makes everything a lot more tighter, and it applies to Windows and iOS and Android and everything, right? So yeah, that's probably the thing that most people won't realize is like, oh, hey, that took a lot of work.
Yeah. I think that might answer the next question, which is, we've seen all the changes that we can play around with and utilize as users, but what changes are happening in the background with this build? You mentioned the Apple Silicon.
Yes.
Yeah.
So kind of behind the scenes, we've been working on a lot of things in terms of kind of our development process and some of the technologies that we're utilizing. When we get to the special new announcement at the end here, I'll talk about that. But some of the new technologies that we're using and some of the things that we've developed in-house have enabled us a great foundation that's really going to enable us to accelerate development in the future. And I'm more excited about the kind of development pipeline than I have been in many, many years.
Great. And this question came in, what is Harlan's workflow like for brainstorming sessions within the Brain?
Oh, brainstorming sessions.
Yeah.
I'm not like a, it may be counterintuitive, but I'm not like a huge, like put stuff all over the place kind of guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't use sticky notes and like put them all over the wall or anything like that. I like to use the editor. I like making lists, so that's usually what I do. I'll make a bunch of different lists, and I use bullets all the time, right? So that was one of the key reasons why I just could not stand the editor that was in the Brain 9.
You remember them by number.
Yeah. No, in the Brain 9, we had to redo the editor, and it looked really good, and I was excited about it at the time, and then like as I started like living with it, I was like, oh, these bullets are just awful.
Yeah.
And we tried to fix it. We tried so hard, but we just couldn't. That's why we gave up and kind of rewrote it. But yeah, I like to use bullets and indent them and move them around and reorganize them and all of that. And the folding feature.
Yeah, collapsing different sections.
Different sections. Yeah. We introduced that in 12. But yeah, that's something I use a lot when I'm doing brainstorming and creating bullet lists, because when you have an indented list, you can open and close each level individually also. So
great. So and what new feature are you using most often?
I had a hint that you might ask me this, so I came up a little bit. Two things came up that are maybe not obvious. Obviously, I'm using the new notes editor all the time, so that's kind of a given. But one of the things we added in 13 was kind of much better formatting. Like when you select a piece of text and say, I want it formatted like this. We used to have like a huge piece of code that was like designed to apply all the formatting and all that, but it wasn't like rock solid. It could screw up occasionally, right? But we threw all that out and rewrote it as part of the WYSIWYG development. And so the new formatting features are great. The thing that you couldn't do via the command bars, toolbar in the past was formatting of code blocks, right? So in the Brain 13 now you can select a bunch of lines and say I want this to be code, and I'm kind of surprised, but I do tend to use that quite a bit. I'm putting more and more code into TheBrain now that we support this way of doing things. And then the other thing that happens behind the scenes that we didn't mention earlier is that when you close TheBrain, it automatically syncs all your stuff.
That's right. Yes.
Right? So
yeah.
that's something that that I do utilize a lot. You kind of forget about it, but
yeah,
it is nice.
It's peace of mind. You're shutting down for the day. You close all your apps, and you see a little window pop up that the brains that you had open are syncing in the background. Yes. And it's just peace of mind. You know that everything's gonna, when you get home and start work, everything's gonna be up to sync, and it's a great feature.
Yeah, I have to say, it just makes me think, as you said, peace of mind is like, having your brain sync to the cloud is like the greatest thing ever.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I used to worry all the time about losing my laptop or like having to back it up and all that stuff. Now I don't even back up my laptop.
Yeah.
Everything's in my brain, and then all the code stuff I work on is synced to the Git repo, of course. So like, and all my photos and whatever, like they're all automatically synced to the cloud. So like I don't have to think about that anymore. Basically anything that's not code or a photo, I put it in my brain, and then I don't have to think about
it. That's nice. And this is a fun question. I like this one. Did you think about naming it version 13? Would that be unlucky? Did you consider skipping and naming it something else?
When 13 was coming up, I thought, oh, it's TheBrain 13, right? Like, it's not unlucky, but it's an important number, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I thought, oh, this is kind of gonna be cool.
Okay, good.
13.
Kept with it. All right.
Embrace it. Embrace it.
Embrace it. Embrace the 13. All right, Harlan, I think this is it. The next question that came in is a nice transition. Thank you, Jeremy, that said, what is next for TheBrain? Version 14? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Okay, so TheBrain 14 isn't what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
But we do have some exciting new stuff that we will talk about. Yeah, like I said, we've been working on a lot of other technology in the background as we've been developing 13 and even 12 and earlier on. Things that you guys kind of don't see in the front page of the software, right? One of the kind of weaknesses of TheBrain, I guess, up until now, has been that the web client is not awesome. It works, but I never tell people to go and look at the web client.
Yeah.
You say download the software, right?
Yeah.
If you don't download the software, you're not seeing the product, basically, right?
And it serves a good purpose, as we've talked about. You click on that sync, and you know that it goes up to the web, and you go to your home machine and download.
Yeah, no, I mean it's great for the cloud is great for synchronizing and all that, right?
Yeah.
And if you just need to like glance at something, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not, as I said, it's not awesome, right? Well, we're gonna fix that. We're gonna fix that in a big way. Yeah, we've been working on some technology for a long time now that we finally got around to saying, okay, we're going to apply this to TheBrain and let's see what it can do, right? And we did so, and I was personally shocked at how good it is. I guess it's too late for me to say I don't want to overhype it. But,
no, look at all the coming in. Charles, Magnus, thank you. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's you're getting a wave of appreciation with.
That's I'm glad to see that. But I mean, we're obviously aware that the web client is not awesome, but it hasn't been something that we've been saying, oh, we're just going to go and work on that, because everyone uses the desktop client. That's kind of the history of the company, where we come from, and there was no such thing as a web client when we started, of course. Everyone wants the rich, full experience of of utilizing a piece of software that has access to everything on your system and can take full advantage of the system, right? So, you know, we didn't spend a lot of time on things that weren't going to be used by our kind of core base customers, right? But yeah, we're not, you know, we're not ignorant of what's happening in the world. And we've got some very smart people here, and they turned us on to some technologies that we use to develop our own new kind of framework. And the new web client is going to be awesome. So.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So stay tuned for the webinar that happens when the new web client is released. That will happen at a later date.
It's not dropping like this year, just to like be clear. You know, we're in October. Next year.
Yeah.
At some point.
You better watch, careful. January 1st. Okay, is it ready?
It's not January 1st. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of great feedback on that. And thank you everyone that joined us. You know, we're not going to be able to get to all the questions that came in. Our support team will go through these and we'll get an answer back to you for all the questions that have come in. Thank you, Harlan, for sharing so much with us today about everything that went into 13 and now everything that we have to get excited about in the future.
Great. It's good to be here. I enjoyed it. Thank you, everybody. You know, I really appreciate, you know, particularly people that have been using the software and participating with us for, you know, decades now, which is incredible. You know, so many people that I talk to say, you know, it's like the center of my digital life, and you know, I couldn't function without it. So to all those people, you know, thank you very much. I really appreciate your support and your enthusiasm over the years. You know, we wouldn't be here without you. So
great. Well, thank you, everyone. This was a great webinar. Again, we will be getting back to all of your questions. And enjoy TheBrain 13. It's available for you now. You can grab it from our website. And if you have any further questions for us, you can always contact us, support@thebrain.com. We're happy to hear from you.
Real people.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Take care.